Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Garrity.
And welcome, everyone, to the Monday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Jim Garrity of National Review is back today. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. We have bad martinis. Jim, I wish I had better news for you coming off your break, but the truth is we've just got lousy stories to talk about, so welcome home.
It is good to be back. I wish we had good news. I wanted to start off the week with, hey, we got some good martinis, but we really don't. And so, Greg, you and I have just decided, it's all bad today. So,
yep, just being honest. That's what we're here for. So let's
bad with a slight tinge of crazy to all of them. So.
Yes, that is for sure. Let's go to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and this is courtesy of NBC News. The state is investigating the shooting on Saturday, which killed a 23-year-old black man named Seville Smith after he fled a police traffic stop on foot. Milwaukee Police Chief Edward Flynn said body camera video that hasn't been released shows that there was a credible threat to the officer, who has been identified only as a 24-year-old African-American man. At some point during the brief chase, Smith turned towards the officer with a gun in his hand that he had stolen, by the way. Smith had a lengthy arrest record and 23 rounds in his gun, authorities said, and obviously that's when the officer fired. In response to that, people taking to the streets, essentially destroying their own neighborhoods on the north side of Milwaukee. 4 businesses were destroyed or badly burned. 7 squad cars were damaged and 4 officers were injured in the chaos Saturday night. 17 people arrested and 48 shots or series of shots were fired, according to police. A teenage girl injured by a stray bullet. Then on Sunday night, not as bad, but still pretty bad, at least one person was wounded after shots were fired and protesters threw objects at police in Milwaukee late Sunday night. Police said they were deploying armored vehicles to protect officers and to rescue a shooting victim who was rushed to a hospital. At midnight Monday, police declared the protest an unlawful assembly and announced that they would begin making arrests. Governor Scott Walker did activate the National Guard, but Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett says they won't actually be deployed unless the police say that it's necessary. So, Jim, it seems like a pretty textbook case, especially if there's body camera footage to back up here. You got a perpetrator who's resisting arrest and about to try and fire on an officer with a stolen gun, but apparently the facts don't matter anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say, Greg, is it just me or does this seem relatively undercovered compared to Ferguson and some of the other violence we've seen over police shootings and cases like that, particularly since there's pretty indisputable riots. I mean, we this is on par with what we saw in Baltimore last year. And so it's definitely in the news, but it feels like it's a page A3, A4 story. And I don't know whether this is a sign of the media getting a little more wary about these stories, feeling like they were kind of burned by, no pun intended, burned by hands up, don't shoot. And obviously the report coming out indicating that actually, no, there isn't any solid evidence that that he was indeed unarmed, had his hands up or anything like that. But it just so happens to me that if the media is becoming more wary of these stories and wants to put less of a spotlight on violent protests against a perception of police misconduct that increasingly looks like it was not accurate. I mean, it looks like this was a armed suspect who represented a danger to others and who was shot. Now it really makes the protesters look bad, makes the protesters look like they're being irrational. There was some gentleman who was quoted who said something, well, it's because the rich aren't giving any of their money to us. Well, that's not really, that doesn't have much to do with police brutality or police misconduct. And at that point, this is just envy. This gentleman must have just come from a Bernie Sanders speech or something like that. So this could make the protesters and rioters look very bad. And you kind of wonder if the media might be pulling back away from this. Also, for the mayor saying that he doesn't think they need the National Guard, how many buildings need to burn before you do? 10? Is there a threshold he kind of has in his head? I'm befuddled by this. It seems like a bad set of circumstances that we'll see if things calm down. But we've had 2 straight nights of violence and rioting. And we'll see if this continues. But this is a circumstance that has gotten a lot of attention in other cities. And it seems strange. If for no other reason, Greg, don't you think the media would want to spotlight this and say, oh, what a terrible job David Clark is doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, they're not even kneecapping him. What's going on with this?
Yeah,
maybe it's August and everybody's on vacation. I don't know.
Definitely weird. And I think you're right. I think essentially what's going on there is they know that the argument by the demonstrators is really, really weak in this case. And if they can't even put a positive spin on it from an MSNBC perspective, they're not going to cover it as much, even though there's plenty to cover there, which shows their bias in a different way. All right, on to the second bad martini now. And Jim, while you were gone, I know you're paying attention to things that were still going on, but one of the things that you didn't have to react to was Donald Trump telling Hugh Hewitt, no, I literally mean that Obama founded ISIS and Hillary Clinton helped him, and they're both MVPs in this, as Hugh Hewitt desperately tried to throw him a life raft that Trump just swatted away.
No, I don't want the life raft. No, I don't want the preserver. No, send away the helicopter. No, I really want to drown. I can't make this clear enough.
So you would think this would be a fairly easy rebuttal for the Clinton campaign, although there's certainly a lot of baggage for the Clinton and Obama legacy when it comes to the rise of ISIS, and that's exactly what Chris Wallace asked to Missouri Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill on Sunday. He says, obviously, Trump was over the top in the rhetoric, but aren't they partly responsible for the rise of ISIS? And Claire McCaskill first blamed it on the Iraqis for not allowing a status of forces agreement. And then she also went even further and eventually got into the blame game.
It was also important to realize that Assad, by what he did in his country, allowed ISIS to move into what was then Iraq, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, into Syria and get strongholds and recruit. That was the work in support of Putin, who is Trump's best buddy. So you can say Trump and his friend Putin are the founder of ISIS, which probably would be more accurate than calling out the commander-in-chief in that way.
Jim, there's a lot of things we can say negatively about Donald Trump, but him being partially responsible for the rise of ISIS is completely absurd. And if we're going to compare the two presidential nominees as to who's more responsible, I'm pretty sure that's an argument Claire McCaskill doesn't want to get into very deeply.
I don't know about you, Greg, but I just picture Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the actual founder of ISIS, sitting somewhere in Raqqa, Syria. He's got a signal. His dish is getting MSNBC, and he's just yelling at the screen, "What do I have to do to get credit here?" That's my Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi impression, by the way. If he spoke English, which I don't really know if he does. Like, really? One, can the founders of ISIS get some credit for actually founding ISIS? It's like reverse outsourcing. We take credit for what other people, foreigners, do. But two, look, Trump, for all of his flaws, and you and I have gone on at great length about them, he hasn't had any voice in U.S. policy for the past, really ever. It's been but you can't say that he set our policy on Iraq back in 2003 or in 2008 or in 2009, 2010. Most people, the observers of ISIS was not a major factor during the Sunni uprising in Western Iraq, and when our troops left Iraq in the early part of the Obama administration. Iraq was relatively stable. Now, there's considerable debate about how much effort the U.S. Could have and should have put into making sure they'd have a permanent presence there. If you think that, Obama did all he could, I suggest you read Leon Panetta's autobiography, in which he makes very clear that they really didn't push the Iraqis very hard on this. With no U.S. presence out there, the Iraqi military became increasingly a system of patronage, and it became something that the public lost their faith in it. And ISIS took over territory that was largely uncontrolled in both Syria and Iraq, and they became what they are today. Now, you can blame a lot of people for that, but I don't think you can blame Donald Trump there. And if we're rushing to his aid, that should give you a sense of just how nonsensical the McCaskill argument is.
No, it certainly is. And it was just 2 weeks ago that we were talking about the WikiLeaks emails, where it seems like some weapons from Libya ended up in the Syrian rebels, which included ISIS most likely, not necessarily the intention, but it did. And just a lot of ugliness in this whole chapter. And the longer this debate goes on, it could potentially redound to Trump's benefit. But every time he's got the upper hand on an issue, he finds a way to completely screw it up and shoot himself in the foot. So we'll see if it keeps going. Anyway, on to the bad martini now. Let's go to Rio. Not just the amazing performances of the athletes there, as Ian and I did on Friday, but also just the situation in Rio itself, because I was watching over the weekend, Jim, and Bob Costas was talking to somebody, I believe, from the International Olympic Committee, and he was asking, when it comes to the sewage-infested water, where the ladies are having their open swim today, so good luck, ladies, in that, and the crime and just the dilapidated status of Rio compared to where it was when they were awarded the games back in 2009. And the guy says, "Oh, no, it's fantastic. It's really important to get the Olympics in this part of the world. It's a fantastic success." Really? Well, let's talk to Ryan Lochte about whether it's a fantastic success, and not just in the pool. As the news broke on Sunday, Lochte and 3 other swimmers who had been out partying on Saturday night and on their way back to the Olympic Village got pulled over. And I'll let Ryan Lochte tell the story here to Billy Bush on the Today Show. We apologize for the audio because NBC apparently thought that'd be a really good idea to have this story and this interview done on the beach with screaming teenagers and the surf coming in. So hopefully you can make out what Ryan Lochte says here.
We got pulled over in our taxi, and these guys came out with a badge, a police badge. No lights, no nothing, just a police badge. They pulled us over, they pulled out their guns, they told the other swimmers to get down on the ground. They got down on the ground. I refused. I was like, we didn't do anything wrong, so I'm not getting down on the ground. And then the guy pulled out his gun, he cocked it, put it to my forehead, and he said, get down. And I was like, I put my hands up, I was like, whatever. He took our money, he took my wallet.
So the second most highly decorated swimmer in the history of Olympic swimming was about an inch away from being murdered, and 3 of his teammates were prone on the ground and were viciously robbed. Jim, this kind of puts the lie to the sanitized version that we've been seeing here, because it's not just this situation either.
It isn't. There have been windows on buses shot, a bullet landed in the media tent for the equestrian event, other athletes being mugged. Thankfully, no one's been killed or seriously hurt here. I just want to make a note, Greg, if God forbid I'm ever mugged, I hope my response is just to say, whatever. I think, you want to talk about just the cool American athlete, whatever, dude, just take the wallet. Okay, whatever. I got a gold medal. There's more where that came from. This could have turned out very differently and very tragically. As it is now, it's just a scary story, but thank God Lochte and the other 4 U.S. swimmers were all right. It's conceivable you could have had something that people would be talking about on the level of Munich Olympic attack. I mean, this Rio is by and large not a safe city, and the fact that they're disguised as cops just makes it even more ominous in the sense of if you're an athlete in trouble and you see cops coming towards you, are they genuine cops? Or are they the bad guys in disguise? So those of us who've been skeptical about Rio de Janeiro hosting the Olympics, we get these little bits of indication. I'm hoping to not be vindicated with a dead athlete, but you got to figure we're 1 week in, and we've had at least a half dozen to a dozen incidents and other ones that preceded the Olympics, including, I think it was the Australian team said they're telling the athletes, just don't go to the beaches anymore. It's just not safe. The skeptics and critics of Rio de Janeiro are being proven right. Hopefully this coming week passes with no additional incidents like this. But right now, athletes are living dangerously, and the International Olympic Committee is the one who ought to be held accountable for this. I wrote in the Morning Jolt today, Greg, the only true karma in this would be if an International Olympic Committee selection team member ended up getting mugged.
That's true. Well, and they originally tried to deny the story yesterday.
Yes.
Until Lochte and Lochte's mother went public with it.
I understand a blanket denial is just the standard response to all stories of the International Olympic Committee. It's totally not true. I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Well, I haven't heard any explanation or reaction to the Lochte and the other swimmers being robbed story from the head of Olympic security, but he himself was a story on the night of the opening ceremonies. If you haven't heard this story, it's because he was attacked as he left the games following the opening ceremony by a knife-wielding robber who ended up being shot dead by a cop. The Daily Mirror in London reports authorities have attempted to hush up details of that shooting, which is a monumental embarrassment to the crime-plagued Rio 2016 bosses. Some nice writing there. Jim, good luck to the divers in the green pool and those swimming in the raw sewage. Bring back the gold if you make it out alive, please.
Hey, Zeke has not been so bad. Let's give him credit, Greg.
That's true. Jim, welcome back. Hopefully we'll have some good news tomorrow.
Looking forward to it, Greg. See you tomorrow.
Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today, and be sure to tune in again on Tuesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.